Hey guys, welcome back. So in this lecture we'll be talking about loops. So whenever we have any task that has quite repetitive or has to be done several times, or is there any conditions which keep changing and need to be checked after every certain block of code, then we will start using loop. So in this video we'll be talking about while loop. So in the previous example or in the previous lecture we talked about if and else condition. So when we were checking any condition and if the condition is true, then we were proceeding for a certain block of code, that is a print statement, or it can be anything that is inside this indentation. And if the condition is false, we were moving towards the else condition. But what if I need to recheck this condition after a certain block of code, or if the variable we are using keeps changing? So for that we start using loops. But before thinking anything else, just clean up your mind and take the basic example of a loop. Something that you need to do repetitive. You try to use a certain block of code and you just run the command that I need to do this for 10 times. So for that particular thing, loop is used. This is the most basic common example. If I want to print 1 to 100, use a loop that print 1, then print 2, print 3, print 4, print 5, print 6 and so on. So this is the most common and basic example. Now before talking more, let us start with while loop and perform a simple example. So here I am taking a variable x as 0 and my problem is I need to print from 1 to 5. So for that I am using while loop. So to start a while loop, all you have to do is write while and then you have to give a condition. So for that I am using x less than 6. I will be explaining why. But for a moment, let us take this. And as the condition ends, use colon and then you will get into the indentation, that is the group block, and now you have to start printing. So my problem is to print from 0 to 5. All I need to do is print the current value of x, which is 0. Now at this point of time x is 0. What I can do is I can add 1 to x, then 0 plus 1 will be 1. And once this loop ends, it will jump back to this condition and check if x is less than 6. If the condition is true, it will jump again inside this particular block of code and print that the current value of x is 1. It will come on this condition again and add 1 again. Then x will be 2. Jump back to this condition, print x is equals to 2. Add 1 again. That will make x as 3. Jump back to this condition and once the condition of x is 6, this will give false to while loop and then it will get out of the code. So for now let us execute this and see our result. You can see it's now currently printing the value of x till 5. You can see, so the basic thing is in my if statement, if the condition is true, it will only do the task for once. But in loops, if the condition is true, it will execute it and then go back to check out the condition. And if I remove this particular line of code to increase the value of x, x will remain 0 forever. That means x is less than 0, it will print the value of x, then go back to this particular condition, still x is 0, print this value, go back to this condition, still the value of x is 0, print this condition. So this loop is going to be forever. And it will keep on printing this particular statement forever. If you want to try, I can show you. And remember, if you want to disturb the infinite loop, all you have to use is Ctrl plus C. That means in our terminal, whenever we are running a condition and it's infinite loop, or whenever you want to break any condition, break any code, you can use Ctrl plus C. Let me try out. You can see it's keep on printing and let me break this condition and let me show you my terminal and you can see it's printed so many times. I'm scrolling up. You can see that it get into infinite loop. So this is the reason that we need to be careful while using any loop, because then you can get into repetitive tasks and that task can run for infinite time. So let me get back my condition. And what I can do is I can use x plus and then 1. That was the thing. Now one more important thing. As we were using if and else, we can also use else with while loop. So this else condition will work when this particular condition is false. So here I can add something that would be executed once the loop condition is completed. Now let me run this command. So here you can see all the conditions of while loop executed, and then we have a statement of loop completed. Why? Because till 5 this condition was true, and once the value of x was 6, this condition gets into false statement. That means we'll move towards the else statement and this condition will be printed. So one thing you need to remember is, if we are using else with while loop, that else condition will be executed always once the particular condition of while loop is turned into false. Now let us perform one more example with while loop, which will help you to understand this in a long term. Because while loop is used to print patterns, while loop will be used when you try to check condition or exit any screen. So we'll be taking that example. Here my task is to keep taking number from user and print the sum. And once the user enters 0, that means my program is done. So let me take two variables. One is num. I'm taking its value as 1. I will explain you in a minute. And the second variable I need is sum, which is 0. Now I need to provide instruction to the user that enter a value, and if you want to exit this program, press 0. So we can use print statement to provide instruction. And once that is done, I need to use a while loop. Why? So whenever the value of num is 0, that means our condition is false and our while loop will stop working and we will be entering into else condition. So I am using a condition as num is not equals to 0. That means keep adding that number into sum. So let me take my while loop. So num is not equals to 0, that means this condition is true, and then I can get inside the block. And if the num is 0, that means get into the else block. And now I need to take input from the user. Now this input will be into string, so I can either convert it into float or integer according to your requirement. I would prefer integer. Now at this point of time, I have taken the input from the user. Now I need to add them. So at currently all the values that I am getting from user, I will be adding that to the sum. At this point of time, sum is 0. Now I need to add the value that I have taken from the user. So sum will be equals to sum plus num. And now I can print the sum. So every time I am going inside the loop, I will be printing the sum. So at this point of time, our condition is good. So let me write a else statement. If you don't want to write, you can skip that. But I'm just writing for a loop completion. Now review your code. What is happening is, I have taken a variable num as 1, taken a sum as 0. So what we need to do is, we need to take an input from a user and keep doing the sum. Now I provided the instruction to the user that if they are going to press 0, then the program will stop. And till that, we need to keep enter a number. Now I have taken a while loop, check the condition that if num is not equals to 0, we are going to run this loop. Once the num that the user enter is 0, that means it will add it to the sum. That would not affect, since 0 is 0. Then it would print the sum, that is the current sum, and go back to the condition. Now the condition will be false because number is equals to 0. So this condition is not followed. It will jump into else condition and our loop is completed. Now let us run this command. Now it is asking us to enter a number. Let me enter 10. Our current sum is 10. Enter 15. Our current sum is 25. Let me enter 0. So our current sum is 25 and our loop completed. I hope you understand while loop. We can do a lot of things with loops. In the next lecture, we will be talking about for loops.